Welcome back to Simplifying the State, the podcast where we simplify politics so you don't have to Google every headline like it's a part-time job. Okay, as always, I'm Adam Watson.
And I'm Nicholas Perrin.
Okay, so today's episode is an opinion episode, and today we're going to be discussing the extent of Trump's immigration policies in a wide sense up to this point of his second term. So they have not been going good in terms of like civil liberties. I mean, I think they have been somewhat achieving their goal of deporting illegal immigrants, although they have deported a few non-illegal immigrants along with that. Like today, they deported a 2-year-old who was born in Louisiana because they didn't want to provide the necessary due process to the mother who was not born in the United States, but the child was born in the United States, so it has citizenship, and so they didn't want to. Not mean to refer to a baby as it. Okay, yeah. So they did not want to provide due process to that group, and that's kind of something we've been seeing where the Trump administration has not been providing due process to some of the immigrants that it has been deporting. So, Nicholas, what do you think?
Well, I think that the mistakes that this has caused speak for themselves. I mean, it's kind of expected to not be able to deport so many people so fast while still providing due process. Basically, the Trump administration has two solutions for this. Either one, deport people slower or not at all, or two, provide due process. Or wait, hold on, I got that mixed up. Or don't provide due process, but do it fast. And they've chose the latter option, which has led to, deportations which should not have happened. I think that, what is that? How many cases have there been yet?
Arrego Garcia? Are you talking about?
Yeah, like that one, and then the 2-year-old. Weren't there also a few others that were like that?
I mean, yeah, there have been a lot of deportations where the people were not provided due process, but those were the most standout ones that have at least been the most in the news recently. I mean, yeah, I'm not sure what the Trump administration's rationale is. I mean, clearly they are not providing due process, which is against the Fifth Amendment. I'm sure they'd argue that the Fifth Amendment only applies to citizens, but I mean, if you actually read the text of the Fifth Amendment, nowhere in there does it say to citizens. It said no person shall be denied due process. It specifically says no person subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. Subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, no matter what people say on the internet, means basically, example, if you can be arrested by the United States government for committing a crime, you are then subject to the United States, meaning that the Fifth Amendment applies to you, and then also birthright citizenship applies to you, and that's something that they have argued does not apply to people who are not legal citizens of the United States, but that's a whole separate topic. But, I mean, the Trump administration is just blatantly violating the Constitution by not providing these people with due process. They're not just going after illegal immigrants; they're also revoking student visas for people, and then a student at Tufts who wrote a piece about their campus's approach to the Israeli-Palestine conflict. They wrote an opinion piece about that. The Trump administration said they were committing anti-Semitism, revoked their visa, and then 6 ICE agents swooped her off the street and then sent her to a privately run ICE prison in Louisiana before judges could intervene. They have intervened now and said that she must be returned to Vermont, which I think is where she originally was. But, I mean, yeah, they're just swooping people off the street and sending them to black sites in Louisiana.
Yeah, it's pretty awful.
I mean, and then we talked about Abrego Garcia. He was living in Maryland. He had protected status. He is a, I think, El Salvadorian national. I think,
Yeah.
yeah, an El Salvadorian national. Um, he was then taken into custody by ICE. He was then deported to the mega prison in El Salvador. His lawyers could not get a hold of him. His family could not get a hold of him, and there was no due process for him. He has since been moved from that mega prison though to a different facility. They don't know which facility. The press doesn't. I'm sure the people in El Salvador do, along with their leader, who has called himself the world's coolest dictator. So that just seems like a guy we should definitely be doing business with. But uh, like I don't even. This is just blatantly unconstitutional. And then the Trump administration has also been defying judges, saying, "Stop doing this while we figure this
Stop.
out." And then they've just been still sending people to deporting people. The Supreme Court. There was a bus of Venezuelan immigrants who were being taken in Texas to be deported. The Supreme Court, in like the middle of the night, stepped in to say, stop. It was like super quick from the time that the thing reached the Supreme Court to when they decided, which is very rare. Uh, Mostly because I think they did not trust the Trump administration would not try to deport these people, or if they had issued the order while they were in the air, like has been previously done, they would have just possibly ignored it or said, "Well, we weren't in American airspace, or we weren't uh, in America, so we didn't have to comply with that," and then they sent them on their way. So I mean, it's just a complete, seemingly disregard for the rule of law in this country.
And I guess to the Trump administration, that might be okay to them because, quoting Trump here, they are poisoning the blood of this country.
Oh God.
So, yeah, it's up to interpretation whether they care or not.
Well, I mean, they clearly don't, given how they've acted. I mean, here's the thing: if you cross the border illegally, and you are probably going to be deported. And if they follow and if they do everything they're supposed to do, they get them in front of a judge. The judge rules that they crossed the border illegally and that they are then to be deported, and then they are then deported. That's fine. That's due process. That is what is supposed to happen. The person is supposed to go before a judge. The judge then decides uh, what should happen, and then the government then carries out the judge's ruling. That is what is supposed to happen when it comes to immigration. The government is not just supposed to swoop in, uh, take a person to an El Salvadorian mega prison without due process, without telling their lawyer where they are going, and then just, just not let them have their day in court, which they're supposed to do. What do you think?
Well, like, there was also this thing recently where a local judge was charged with obstructing like immigration agents trying to what was it like
Yeah,
they
it was
charged.
so. Yeah, the judge apparently attempted to obstruct ICE from deporting someone while they were in the courtroom of that judge, and so then they arrested her.
Yeah, and so if if she is guilty of that, then like that would be a result. Like the reason she would have a reason for doing that, and I think the reason would be, I guess, a sort of protest against the current administration's like policy of dealing with illegal immigrants and even U.S. citizens, as we've seen. So I think public outcry to this is already showing a little bit, and it has been showing in polls as well. Because I think in most polls, Trump has shown greater disapproval rating than approval rating.
Yeah, I looked at it today. It was 41% approval rating, and it's like 100 days into office, which is like one of the lowest for a president this early on.
Yeah, but I'm saying like specifically about immigration, like
Oh,
even
right, yeah.
like that, like he was. I think I saw 53% to 47% approval versus disapproval. I think the closest margin I saw was 51% to 49%. So not looking too good for him.
Yeah, and then, but here's the thing though. There are people like who see this and they say, well, that can't happen to American citizens. They're only deporting the worst of the worst or something like that. Here's the thing. He might be coming for Americans next. I mean, he in the Oval Office was caught on a hot mic discussing with the El Salvadorian president. He said, quote, "We're going to send you the homegrown ones next." So he seems like he might want to, and he said this multiple times on the campaign trail. So this is not the first time he's mentioned this. So it seems like he might now be going to looking at deporting American citizens who are not immigrants to El Salvador now too. And I mean, once you do that, it's a slippery slope. I mean, once you create a group which is then not subject to law or protections, then I mean, what's to stop the government from then looping anyone it doesn't like into that group? We talked about the Tufts student journalist. Now they also deported two activists. They revoked their visas and deported two student activists who were engaged in the protests over last spring, the pro-Palestinian protests on college campuses. They deported two of the people who were in charge of organizing those protests. And again, here's the thing. If you commit a crime, you go before a judge and possibly a jury, depending upon the situation. The judge rules, and then the government carries out the punishment that the judge rules on. That's how it works in the United States. That's how the judicial system is supposed to work. The government does not just get to unilaterally take somebody and then send them God knows where without providing due process to that person. What do you
I
think?
mean, yeah, as we've seen, he has been like Trump and his administration has been very blatantly violating the Constitution, and no real um like I mean, there have been lawsuits, but nothing directly to like not I think substantial or that would cause him to need to step down or anything, as far as I know. And I'm not even sure if he could because of like the immunity that the Supreme Court granted presidents.
You mean the impeachment stuff, or like charging with crimes and stuff?
For what? Like the
No, like you
lawsuits?
said, he nothing he would that would cause him to step down.
Yeah, I thought like I don't know. I hadn't. I heard some like lawsuits were being tossed around, but I wasn't sure if they were
Yeah, no,
like.
I think they have been sued, but I mean, I don't think he'd step down over it probably.
Yeah, I was just wondering if there was any like court cases going on where he would need to step down because of them, and I don't think there are.
No, no, no. 'Cause, I mean, the only way he would step down probably is if it was clear that the Congress was going to impeach him and then convict him, which probably would not happen. I mean, that's why Nixon resigned. It wasn't because he felt he had done the wrong thing. It was because he got word that he didn't have the votes to stop him from getting both impeached and then convicted. So that's why he stepped down. But I mean, I was reading this story. I was reading this article about. So there was this private mercenary group called Blackwater, and the guy who used to run it was apparently in talks with President Trump and then the leader of El Salvador to create like this legal black hole in an El Salvadorian mega prison, like make some wing of it U.S. territory or whatever, so that then they can send uh, U.S. citizens there, but then the legality of it will be kind of iffy, kind of like Guantanamo Bay. So they wanted to create something similar to Guantanamo Bay, to then send American criminals to not in the United States. And then he wanted to run it, and so he was apparently in talks with the president of the United States and then also of El Salvador to do that, which I think is pretty alarming.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say the like nuclear year just yet, but it seems to be getting to that.
Yeah. I mean, like we said, this is just increasingly authoritarian. The deportation of people who have criticized the government, right? Then you have the possible deporting of U.S. citizens. And I mean, I think this, and in my opinion, this is kind of what they're wanting to do. They started slow. They started with, we're only going to deport the worst of the worst. Then they're deporting, then there were a couple of accidental, as a guy in the Justice Department said about the Abrego Garcia case, because he said it should not have happened because he does not have a criminal record. They deported him. Then that happened. Now they're talking about possibly deporting U.S. citizens. At the same time, they're revoking visas and deporting activists and student journalists. So, I mean, how long before you have, a protester who, he's talked about he might want to uh, charge the people who are vandalizing the Tesla dealerships with domestic terrorism? How long before they possibly want to send those people to a mega prison in El Salvador? And then once you do that, then it's whoever the Trump administration deems a threat to national security or whatever, they then send them to that mega prison, and then you have a slippery slope into authoritarianism.
That about surmises the situation thus far.
Yeah. All right. Well, Nicholas, do you have anything else to add?
And nope, but, well, actually, one thing, I guess. I think a comparison of how Hungary and Russia became more authoritarian and how the US is right now, I think would
Right.
be a good idea.
So I think if you look at a timeline of those countries' descents into authoritarianism, you may see some unfortunate similarities. One last thing, though, before we go. In those countries, there was perhaps not as much protesting or resistance to what the government was doing as it slowly became autocratic. In this country, though, there is a level of protection for free speech and the freedom to protest and the freedom to assemble that was not present in those countries. It is a completely American thing, the freedom to protest and assemble and say to the government that we do not like what you are doing. And so I encourage you, if you do not like what the government is doing, go out and protest. Go out and assemble in a peaceful way, obviously, to then say to the government, this is not okay. This is wrong. What you are doing is either unconstitutional or illegal or just morally wrong. And so that is the best way to make your voice heard, is to go out and protest. Okay, thank you for listening to Simplifying the State. We'll be back next week with our next episode, so stay tuned then.